Ladies and gentlemen, could you please welcome to Monash University the Minister of Trade for the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Thomas Lembong.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Khan, for a very warm and kind welcome, and thank you all for making time this morning. It's been great to be here this week. The sense of possibility is very palpable. I think there's a lot of excitement on both sides. Australian government, the Indonesian government, about what is potentially possible. And as a sneak preview, education and training feature very prominently on the agenda. I'll look at it shortly, obviously. So I think Professor Khan alluded to my role in the cabinet, in the government. It's probably symptomatic of broader changes in Indonesia and Indonesian society. Right? If we take stock, where are we right now? Right? Where are we in history? Where are we as a society? If we think back 15 years ago, say, at the turn of the century, turn of the millennium, year 2000. Back then, our economy was $170 billion per year, right? $170 billion per year. I think at the time it was small. I remember, I think in 2004, 2005, Google just went public at a market cap of like $200 million per year. So, our entire economy was smaller than the market cap of Google. Today, the GDP of Indonesia is what, $860 billion per year. So it's quadrupled. It's more than quadrupled in the last 15 years. If you visited Jakarta 15 years ago, I think it's fair to say probably you'd see about 1/4 or 1/3 the number of skyscrapers, the number of shopping malls, right? If you came to Jakarta Airport, it would appear to today's eyes to be a very sleepy place with planes taking off and on occasionally. Of course, you fast forward 15 years to today, and Jakarta Airport is packed, and there's queues of 4 or 5 airplanes waiting to take off, and an airplane landing every 3 minutes. Frankly, we've become a palm oil nation, right? We've become not only the largest exporter, but even the largest producer of palm oil. $20 billion per year of exports. In fact, it's becoming a bit alarming how dependent we become on palm oil exports. Frankly, it's by far our largest non-oil, non-gas export. Employing something like 4 million people directly and up to 16 million people indirectly. What would Jakarta and what would Indonesia look like 15 years from now? Right. So we just talked about 15 years ago and today, and 15 years from now. I think without too much extrapolation or without too much boldness, I think you'd probably see double or triple again the number of skyscrapers in Jakarta. Right now, we're still working on the first subway line in the city, much overdue, a project that people for 25 years said couldn't be done, and President Jokowi, with his governor of Jakarta, broke through and finally got it done. Right? Probably in 10, 15 years there will be at least 3 subway lines in Jakarta. I think there'll be a 3rd runway in Jakarta, and then other things which might be a bit more surprising. I predict that as you drive down the main thoroughfare in Jakarta, the Jalan Sudirman, you would see drone aircraft zipping back and forth between buildings, and maybe down the freeway or down the main thoroughfares. I think our GDP by then should be be somewhere between 1.5 trillion and 2.5 trillion dollars per year, right? And I think I predict that the country would be unrecognizable compared to what it is today, similar to how 15 years ago it would have been hard to imagine how large palm oil plantations would get, how cosmopolitan and built up Jakarta would get. What stands between that future and the present, right? I think if I had to characterize the present moment, right? Last night at a business dinner organized by the Australia-Indonesia Business Council, I dared to deploy the alarmingly overused cliche that we're at a crossroads. Right? But it really does feel true. Now, at university this morning, perhaps the phrase I would use to characterize the moment is the millennials have arrived. Right? We really are at a generational changeover, and it's really led, of course, by our remarkable president, Mr. Jokowi. And even though he's in his mid-50s and just enjoyed the birth of his first grandchild last week, I think, he really is your president. He really is our president. He is a president for the millennial generation. As I travel around the world and engage with trade ministers like Steve Chiobo, Andrew Robb before him, with U.S. Trade Rep Mike Froman, and we talk about what's happening in Indonesia and how we link that up to what's happening in the USA, what's happening in Australia. It's really remarkable how often I just go back to that singular individual, which is President Jokowi, right? Some of the ways in which he's millennial, of course, even more than 10 years ago when he was mayor of the mid-sized city of Solo, Java, he pioneered e-government, e-budgeting, e-procurement, delivery of public services via the internet. I think he was an early user of Google Maps to try to map the city of Solo and pinpoint where traffic jams were prone to occur or flooding was prone to occur. Then when he ran for the governorship of Jakarta, it was already a very social media campaign, and that was back in, what was it, 13, right? Governor of Jakarta, 12 or 13. Back then, frankly, Facebook was booming, but it was still not public yet. It was still fairly nascent. Twitter was still fairly nascent, but he had already embraced Twitter, Facebook. Back then, it wasn't yet WhatsApp group chats. It was more BlackBerry Messenger group chats. But even on BlackBerry Messenger group chat media, all the funny cartoons, the photos of him in the field, were instrumental in getting him elected by a landslide to be governor of Jakarta. We saw the same thing, but even more amplified, even more advanced with the presidential election in 2014. That's only continued. Right? That's only continued into the administration, into government today. The administration's about 18 months into it, and he's continued to move at astonishing speed. I'm happy to report that at this stage, we're probably on track to be the most reformist government Indonesia has had in easily 10, possibly 15 years. Right? He's launched the largest infrastructure program in the history of the Republic. By the way, we've done it before, back in 04, 05, but nothing happened afterwards. Right? This time, stuff is actually getting built, amazingly. As I travel around the country, I'm astonished time and again. Serendipitously, as I drive down the road towards one meeting or another, I see a billboard for a reservoir being built, or I drive by a new railway being built. Then about 6 months ago, he launched a massive deregulation drive. trying to cut red tape, unifying applications for permits and licenses into a one-stop shop, putting everything online. Since then, we've launched 9 more policy packages, so we're now on policy package number 10. But look, even after all that, right? Even after all that, I think the president himself would be the first to admit that we still have a long way to go. Basically, like many other commodities-intensive economies around the world, we really get spoiled by the commodities boom, right? We get rich just digging up minerals and harvesting palm oil fruit bunches, shipping them out, and we've allowed our institutions to languish. We've allowed our infrastructure and our human capital to languish, and in many respects, that's why I'm here this week, right? Is to continue to progress on our efforts to address these shortcomings. Key to what's happening now, right? Frankly, this is what President Jokowi already underlined in his campaign 2 years ago. A major plank of his campaign was what he called revolusi mental, right? I personally like to translate that into English as mindset revolution, right? A revolution in mindset. And I think that's the way, in my view, in which he is the most millennial, right? I mean, he's really dragging all of us from Gen X or even baby boomer mindset, from Gen X or baby boomer frame of reference to very modern, very digital, very technology driven frames of reference, ways of thinking about the world. He's aware of drone technology. He's aware of 3D printing. He's aware of e-commerce, deeply aware of e-commerce. And for somebody who spent much of his career in Central Java, he's amazingly international. Now, admittedly, as an entrepreneur, he was a furniture expert. So, over decades, he routinely went to furniture exhibitions in the United States, in Europe, Kölner Messe in Cologne, and the Chicago Furniture Expo. So I guess that's one way he got his internationalist mindset. But again, for somebody who connects so well with the working classes, with the rural societies, with the downtrodden even, it's remarkable how when you get into discussions with him, he's so international. As trade minister, I accompany him on virtually all international trips, and I'm just struck again and again by how he just gets it. He just gets it. As Professor Khan alluded, this is actually my second sitting government. Right after the Asian financial crisis, 1997, 1998 Asian financial crisis, I joined the Indonesian Macroeconomic Agency for a 2-year stint. It was kind of a bank rescue, bank recapitalization agency set up by Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank, IMF and World Bank. So I've worked with bureaucrats and civil servants before, including minister level and so on. And working with President Jokowi and Vice President Kala and our current, I think it's trickled down now to the coordinating ministers. It's trickling down quickly to the other ministers. But back to President Jokowi specifically, give you an example. About 3 weeks ago, I was in California with President Jokowi for the US-ASEAN summit between President Obama and the heads of state of the 10 ASEAN countries. And President Obama very appropriately chose as his agenda digital economy. right? Digital economy, technology, and so on. And as part of the program, he brought in the CEOs of Microsoft, IBM, and Cisco, and they each presented their thoughts, their updates, right? Cloud computing, mobile applications, artificial intelligence, algorithms, and engaged in Q&A with heads of state. And President Jokowi asked about data centers and cloud computing, right? He asked, what would be your advice on the best policy with respect to data centers, right? And the CEO of IBM and Microsoft, more so than Cisco, I guess, cautioned against data localization requirements, right? A big debate in the world right now is about sovereignty of data, right? Like your healthcare records, if you're Australian, should they be allowed to reside overseas, right? Or should governments compel technology providers like Microsoft and Cisco or Google to locate their citizens' data onshore inside their own sovereign territory and so on. But the point I'm getting at is President Jokowi just got it. And even after the formal summit, when we were sitting outside waiting for our shuttle buses and so on, I was chatting informally with the president, and again, I was just struck by how he just got it. Basically, the first thing he said when we get outside is, "We're screwed." Quite simply, we're screwed, right? Like if we don't shape up, we're gonna get bulldozed, right? So not only did he get it, his approach wasn't to show off how smart he is or how he's the smartest guy in the room and how he knows how data center works or the latest kind of esoteric policy discussion, but he just said, we're screwed. We're totally screwed. If we don't shape up, we're gonna get bulldozed, right? And I think that's above all what makes me a believer, right? That makes me believe that this time it's for real, right? Because at a gut level, he just gets it. He really, really gets it. And again, it's not academic for him. It's not conceptual or about policy or so on. It's about the real action in the field. It's what's happening on your mobile device. It's what's happening to our healthcare records. It's what's happening to skills and the salary that our workers collect. How that's affected by technology. To him, it's all so real, and he himself is so real, right? Now, what is the implication for Indonesia, Australia, right? Australia, in my view, is to be congratulated on education, which is really remarkable, right? Especially in the services sector, which, in our view, is really where the action is in the 21st century, right? Service sector, obviously finance and financial services, but also tourism, hospitality, real estate, healthcare, and right here, education. And I think Australia has coped and is coping remarkably well with how all these service sectors are being transformed by technology and by social media, right? Just yesterday at the business dinner, I think Andrew, you were the one, right, was pointing out that in last year's season of Australia MasterChef, there was an Indonesian contestant, and I googled him afterwards. Reynald Purnomo, right? He was opening up or has opened up a dessert bar on the rocks for in Sydney. But again, Australia Master Chef, right? And it's gone global. It's pulled in Indonesians. It's on social media, on YouTube, and so on. Indonesia is just starting, right? Indonesia is just starting to get into the 21st century, finally, under the leadership of our millennial president, as I call it this morning. But we're catching up with astonishing speed. Before, no thanks to our government, it's frankly young people such as yourselves, in many cases, who have led the revolution. Like the volunteers who first made Mr. Jokowi governor and then president. It was very volunteer-driven, and all these volunteers spontaneously deployed the latest technologies like social media. But even today, we have something like 84 million active users per month on Facebook in Indonesia. So that's roughly 1/2 the adult population. If you fast forward to 15 years from now, what it look like? I think it's fair to say that we would have 100% of our adult population and probably quite a bit of our non-adult population, on social media, possibly Facebook. But the implication of where the two countries are is that, to me certainly, there's a stunning degree of complementarity between the two societies, right? You've attained these high standards, you've attained the sophistication, but Australia too is at a crossroads, right? Where do you go from here? What's next? The last decade was about capitalizing on China's rise, shipping hundreds of millions of tons of iron ore and coking coal and minerals and so on. I think Australia has navigated the collapse of the commodity cycle very well, like shifting from commodities now to real estate, property, and other services. Thanks to the phenomenal Andrew Robb, you now have a raft of free trade agreements in place with China, with the 12 members of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, and there'll be a lot of gains from that. But what's next? What's next? I think one thing that I like to say is that serendipity is a beautiful thing, right? Serendipity is a beautiful thing, and we just have this lucky coincidence that PM Turnbull, soon after being in office, decided for his first overseas trip to stop by Indonesia, right? And as luck would have it, the chemistry between him and Jokowi was phenomenal. Excellent. I guess they're both lifelong private sector entrepreneurs. They're both very down to earth, very humorous, and they really hit it off. Concurrently, on what we jokingly call the circuit, of G20 trade ministers meetings and APEC trade ministers meetings, WTO meetings, and so on. My counterpart, Andrew Robb, and I also developed excellent chemistry, right? So, we have this alignment of the stars, where the political moment seems to be right, for Indonesia and Australia to try something new, right? Or to try again in a new way. And that's why I'm here this week with the delegation and have had some wonderful talks. But both sides, I think, have our eyes very firmly on the future, right? Look, frankly, the relations between the two countries have periodically been quite rocky, from my perspective, and probably not to put words in their mouth. but probably from my Australian colleague's perspective, also often for rather silly reasons, right? But I think already we're in the process of broadening the frame of reference, right? Broadening the discussion to services sector, right? To digital economy, and as we do that, it begins to shrink our old modes of contention down to the proper proportion, right? Not to say that cattle and beef trade is not important. It's hundreds of millions of dollars of trade per year. It's thousands and possibly tens of thousands of jobs per year, right? Not that wheat exports in Australia aren't important. They feed millions, frankly, even tens of millions of Indonesians through noodles and bakery products and so on, right? But you can't keep being stuck on just those issues, right? You can't just keep going round and round about how to boost wheat exports or how to further smooth out the cattle and beef trade between the countries. You've got to start breaking into new areas, right? And frankly, education, as I mentioned earlier, features very, very prominently on that front. So once you add service sector, which is huge, right? Between education, healthcare, tourism, culinary, and so on into it, and then the whole digital economy, it becomes a very far-reaching discussion, and that's what excites both of us, right? Had a very nice courtesy call on PM Turnbull in Canberra yesterday. It was a very short meeting. For PM and Deputy PM Joyce were puffy-faced and bleary-eyed, and stifling yawns because it's not only the last week, but it was the last day of the last week of the current parliamentary session. Nevertheless, they were energized and excited. And I told PM Turnbull, PM, I want to leave you just this morning from our short meeting. I want to leave you with two buzzwords. The first is fun. The second one is powerhouse. Right? And again, I think with this freshness which our new generation millennial leaders are bringing to the table, it was maybe inevitable that we would eventually get to the fun stuff, right? Which, to cite two examples, included culinary and fashions, right? So when we talked about, wheat and beef and so on, somehow, again, serendipitously, we just started talking about, how about culinary, right? Like, again, Australia Master Chef. I forget the name, but there's this celebrity chef from Australia, kind of like a Jamie Oliver-like. But you're starting to see those kinds of people emerging. Fashions, and again, I think we're now increasingly on that wavelength. I was pleasantly surprised, to be told by my team that it so happens to be that Australia Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, right, recently launched a fashion diplomacy initiative, which I think is spot on. Increasingly, even diplomacy is about soft power, right? Culture, lifestyle, fun. Diplomacy and trade are about winning the hearts as well as the minds of people, and a great way into people's hearts is through their stomach, right? But look, if we imagine, right, that we fall asleep today and wake up 15 years from now, right, and look around and what the world look like by then, especially in Australia, right, which is already a very advanced country. Tongue in cheek, if you think about the world envisioned by Star Trek, right? And again, I don't know how many of you here are Trekkies versus Star Wars. But in the world of Star Trek, right, the sci-fi TV series and movies, I don't know, a few hundred years in the future, basically we solved all the world's problems. Right? We solved poverty, we solved hunger, we solved disease, and then, frankly, what do you do after that, right? What do you do after that? What's there to do? Like, how do we earn a living? Well, in that world, people keep themselves busy by exploration, right? And the byline of Star Trek was to go where no human has gone before, right? To break new ground, to discover new territories or areas, and whilst they're doing that, they're also having 3D printed lattes, or 3D printed raspberry scones. I apologize if you don't really follow this stuff closely, but in Star Trek they have this entertainment arena called a holodeck, right? Where they can pretend to be Christopher Columbus or 17th century explorers on a galleon, right? So they're in addition to discovering new things and making bold adventures into new areas of space, they're also having fun along the way, right? Well, that's in a way what our future looks like, right? In the future, it's going to be about knowledge, right? It's going to be about discovering, new things in science and culture, and yes, also including in space, right? Space exploration, but to a very significant extent, it's going to be about lifestyle. And as we were discussing about ways of collaboration, right? Australians educating and training Indonesians, Australians and Indonesians collaborating in the hospitality sector, in culinary, in agriculture, and so on. My pitch to the Australians was, guys, this type of stuff, I would call it your dream jobs of the future, right? Because it's fun stuff. It's stuff like fashions and culinary, and as we try to manage all these enterprises, about management, which is ultimately about leadership, how to motivate ourselves, how to inspire each other, and what could be more fun, more noble, more fulfilling than this type of very high-end services-oriented, lifestyle-oriented, discovery-oriented stuff. So that's the vision behind this week's talks between the Australian government and the Indonesian government, obviously under the guise of the trade agreement, but I think underneath it there's a percolating sense of very broad possibilities, and very much with our eye on the future. So I think that's all I have to share this morning. Thank you once again for having me, and I look forward to exploring with all of you possible avenues for collaboration. And once again, I hope you can also help me get out there and spread the message about how exciting this potentially could be. Really, if you can make this work, we can forge a strong partnership between Australia and Indonesia, I believe we would be unstoppable. We would be a powerhouse, right? In the Asia-Pacific region, Australia would unquestionably become the gateway to Asia. For Europe, for America, and again, combining Indonesia with all its culture and spices and useful demography, with Australia's sophistication and high standards, we would be unbeatable. So once again, thank you very much. And,